The stars looked different from the bridge of the UNSC Defender. Captain William Boyd stood with his hands behind his back, watching the unknown ship approach. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of the largest human vessel, with a design unlike anything humans had seen before. Its hull was dark purple with strange markings that seemed to glow. "Any response to our hails?" Boyd asked, his voice calm despite the tension in the air. Lieutenant Donna Miller shook her head. "Nothing yet, sir. We've tried all frequencies and even the new xenolinguistic patterns," Dr. Murphy suggested. Boyd nodded. This was humanity's first contact with an alien species, and he was determined to make it peaceful. Earth had united after decades of conflict, and the United Space Command represented all of humanity as they reached for the stars. "Keep trying," he ordered, "and maintain our current position. We don't want to appear aggressive." The alien ship suddenly came to a complete stop, a maneuver that should have been impossible for a vessel of that size. A beam of light shot out from the alien ship, materializing as a hologram on the Defender's bridge. The being that appeared stood nearly 7 feet tall. It had 6 limbs, a head that seemed too small for its body, and skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Its eyes, all 4 of them, focused on Boyd. "I am Ambassador Xilvek of the Krathar Dominion," the alien said in perfect English. "Your transmissions have been intercepted and analyzed. Your species is now known to us." Boyd stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we welcome you. I am Captain William Boyd. We come in peace and hope to establish friendly relations." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter, but it held no warmth. "Peace. The Krathar do not seek peace with lesser species. We seek only to determine your place. Will you serve, or will you be removed?" The bridge fell silent. Boyd kept his face neutral, though his heart raced. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. We're not offering to serve, but to ally. Humanity is willing to share knowledge, resources." "Silence." Xilvek cut him off. "Your species has 2 Earth rotations to submit to Krathar rule. Resistance is pointless. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are inadequate. Your understanding of the universe is that of children." Admiral Susan Grant, watching the exchange from Earth via video link, spoke up. "Ambassador Xilvek, we wish to understand your customs and ways, but we will not surrender our sovereignty. Surely there is room in the galaxy for cooperation rather than submission." The alien's skin flashed red. "Your defiance is noted. To demonstrate the cost of such foolishness." Without warning, a beam of energy shot from the Krathar ship toward Earth. On screens throughout the Defender, the crew watched in horror as the International Orbital Research Station exploded in a ball of fire. 342 scientists and technicians died instantly. "That was merely a demonstration," Xilvek said. "When we return, it will be with the full might of the Dominion." The hologram disappeared. The alien ship turned and accelerated away at impossible speed. "Get me Earth Command," Boyd said, his voice tight with anger and grief. Hours later, leaders from around the world gathered in an emergency session. Military commanders, scientists, and government officials all faced the same terrible reality. Humanity was about to fight its first interstellar war. Dr. Alan Murphy, a xenobiologist who had been studying the recorded encounter, raised his hand to speak. "There's something odd about the Krathar psychology," he said. "From the limited interaction we had, I noticed they seem to have no concept of asymmetric warfare. They expected us to either surrender or fight them head-on. Their evolutionary history as apex predators suggests they always attack directly." Admiral Grant leaned forward. "You're saying they don't understand how to fight against a weaker enemy that won't play by their rules?" Murphy nodded. "Exactly. They've conquered 17 star systems according to their ambassador, but I suspect they've never encountered a species that would rather fight dirty than die with honor." A small smile appeared on Grant's face. "Well then, Doctor, it seems humanity is about to teach the Krathar a lesson in human madness. As the meeting continued, ships across the solar system began to prepare. The Krathar wanted war. They were about to get it, but not the kind they expected. 3 months passed quickly. Earth prepared as best it could, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The Krathar arrived with a fleet of 50 warships, each one larger than anything humans had built. Admiral Grant stood in the command center on Luna Base, watching the enemy ships appear at the edge of the solar system. "They're forming a straight line," said Commander Olivia Blackwell, studying the tactical display. "Classic show of force. They want us to see their full strength." Grant nodded. "And they expect us to either surrender or meet them head-on." She turned to face the room full of officers. "But that's not what we're going to do. Begin Operation Scattered Hornet." Across the solar system, the human fleet, outnumbered 3-1, scattered in all directions. Small attack groups of 3 to 5 ships moved behind moons, into asteroid fields, and along the rings of Saturn. The Krathar fleet moved forward in perfect formation, heading straight for Earth. Their commander, War Chief Dervok, was confused by the human response. "They flee before us," he told his officers, "as expected from a primitive species." His second-in-command looked uncertain. "But they do not flee toward their homeworld. They scatter in all directions. This is not surrender." "It does not matter," Dervok said. "They cannot hide. We will destroy their main fleet, then hunt down the rest." But there was no main fleet to destroy. As the Krathar ships passed Mars, 5 small human vessels darted out from Phobos, firing missiles at the engines of the last ship in the Krathar line. Before the aliens could respond, the human ships disappeared back into the moon's shadow. Near Jupiter, another group struck, targeting communication arrays on 2 Krathar vessels before vanishing into the gas giant's storm systems. Dervok raged at his crew. "Find them. Force them to fight properly." But the humans refused to fight properly. For every Krathar ship that managed to engage human vessels, 3 more were hit from unexpected angles by attackers who immediately retreated. On the UNSC Wasp, Captain Joe Harris watched his small attack group dart between the rings of Saturn, using the ice and rocks as cover. "Target their rear sensors," he ordered. "Fire and move." His ships fired, damaging another Krathar vessel before disappearing back into the rings. Meanwhile, Lieutenant George Harmon led a team of 6 soldiers on a mission unlike any other. They piloted a captured Krathar shuttle, using codes obtained from a damaged enemy ship. "Stay calm," Harmon told his team as they approached one of the largest Krathar warships. "Remember, they never expect an enemy to attack from within." Their shuttle docked successfully. The Krathar, with no concept of infiltration, had minimal internal security. Harmon's team moved through the massive ship, planting devices on key systems. "These aliens think in straight lines," Harmon whispered as they worked. "They don't understand deception." In the ship's central computer room, tech specialist Lisa Reeves connected a device to the alien system. "I'm in," she said after a few minutes. "Their security is advanced but predictable. They've never needed to protect against their own technology being used against them." She downloaded vital information, ship schematics, fleet movements, and most importantly, details about Krathar communication systems. "They use a unified system," she told Harmon. "All ships connected directly. No encryption between vessels." Harmon smiled. "They trust each other completely. Never imagined someone would get access." Back on Luna Base, Admiral Grant received the data. "This is better than we hoped," she told Commander Blackwell. "They have no defense against cyber warfare. Their ships all speak to each other constantly." Blackwell nodded. "Because their society has no concept of internal threats, no civil wars, no rebellions, and no concept of hacking." Grant added, "Prepare the next phase. If they want to see human madness, let's show them what we can really do." Across the solar system, the scattered human fleet continued to strike and fade away. The Krathar, designed for direct confrontation, found themselves fighting shadows. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they faced an enemy that refused to be destroyed, that turned weakness into strength, and that somehow seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. War Chief Dervok stared at the tactical display, watching another of his ships report damage from an attack they never saw coming. "What manner of warriors are these humans?" he asked, his voice filled with growing uncertainty. 6 months into the war, the humans changed their approach. Dr. Diane Russell sat in a room filled with screens showing Krothar behavior and biology data. As Earth's top military psychologist, she had spent months studying the enemy. "They communicate through vibrations," she explained to Admiral Grant. "Their hearing is 3 times more sensitive than ours. It's how they coordinate so perfectly in battle." Grant leaned forward. "And you think we can use this against them?" Dr. Russell smiled. "I've been working with our audio engineers. The Krothar have never encountered anything like human music." 2 days later, a small group of human fighters approached a Krothar patrol near Europa. The aliens prepared for another hit-and-run attack, but instead, the human ships broadcast something unexpected: heavy metal music at maximum volume. The effect was immediate. The Krothar ships broke formation, their movements becoming erratic. Their sensitive hearing organs, evolved to detect subtle vibration changes, were overwhelmed by the chaotic sound patterns. "It's working," said Captain Ben Morris from the lead fighter. "They can't coordinate while the music plays." The human ships easily destroyed 2 Krothar vessels before the others retreated. Meanwhile, Kyle Martinez worked in a small room deep inside Luna Base. Surrounded by computers, the tech specialist led Earth's hacking team. Using the data from Lieutenant Harmon's mission, they had been working on something special. "We're in their communication network," he told Commander Blackwell. "Ready to deploy the audio virus." Blackwell nodded. "Do it." Across the solar system, Krothar ships suddenly began broadcasting sounds through their internal systems. Human laughter. To humans, it was ordinary laughter, people enjoying jokes. But to the Krothar, it sounded eerily similar to their species' death rattles. On the Krothar command ship, War Chief Dervok received reports of growing fear among his troops. "The humans make our ships create death sounds," one officer reported. "Crews are afraid to use communication systems." Another officer added, "They attack without warning, refuse to fight properly, and now they fill our ships with these horrible sounds." Dervok slammed his fist down. "They are savages. Their tactics make no sense." His chief scientist disagreed. "Their tactics do make sense, War Chief, just not to us. They fight like no species we have ever encountered." The Krothar Military Council met in their distant homeworld. The Supreme Commander, Rezkar, reviewed reports from the Earth conflict. "This was supposed to be a simple conquest," he said. "Yet 6 months have passed, and we have lost 23 ships while destroying only 12 of theirs." A council member spoke up. "The humans fight without honor. They hide, strike from shadows, and retreat. They sacrifice tactical positions for no apparent reason," added another. "Then we discover it was a trap." Rezkar studied the battle recordings. "They endure losses that make no sense. They destroyed one of our destroyers by flying directly into it, sacrificing their own ship completely." The council fell silent. Such behavior was incomprehensible to the Krothar, who valued hierarchy, order, and logical progression in all things, including war. "There is more," Rezkar continued. "Our ships are finding messages left on destroyed vessels, written in our language." He displayed the message: "We are everywhere. We are nowhere. We are watching." Back in the Sol system, human forces had begun leaving small devices on destroyed Krothar ships. These devices would activate days later, broadcasting more strange sounds or messages before self-destructing. Dr. Russell explained the strategy to Earth's leadership. "We're not just fighting with weapons now. We're fighting with psychology. The Krothar expect enemies to behave predictably, to follow rules of engagement. We're showing them humans don't play by anyone's rules but our own. Admiral Grant nodded. We can't match their firepower or technology, but we can make them fear us. On a Krathar patrol ship near Neptune, the commander ordered his crew to change course after detecting strange energy readings. As they turned, human laughter echoed through their communication system. The commander felt something he had never experienced before in battle: dread. The humans were changing the rules of war, and the mighty Krathar were beginning to understand what it meant to face human madness. Earth's military resources were running low. The Krathar still had more ships and better weapons, even though humans had destroyed many of their vessels. It was time for new tactics. Professor Laura Jenkins worked in her lab on Luna Base, surrounded by strange devices. As one of Earth's top material scientists, she had been studying the Krathar technology salvaged from destroyed ships. Their bodies evolved in higher gravity than Earth's, she explained to Admiral Grant. That's why they use artificial gravity systems on their ships. They need it to function properly. Grant looked at the small device on the table. And this will disrupt those systems. Jenkins nodded. For about 30 seconds, but that's enough to throw them into chaos. The first gravity bombs were deployed near Saturn. When Krathar ships approached, human vessels dropped the devices and quickly moved away. The bombs activated, creating a field that temporarily disrupted the artificial gravity on the alien ships. Inside the Krathar vessels, everything went wrong at once. The aliens, used to higher gravity, suddenly found themselves floating. Equipment, weapons, and crew members crashed into walls and each other when the gravity returned seconds later at fluctuating levels. Colonel Peter Daniels had a different idea. His team modified small fighter craft to appear as debris. These ships drifted silently, systems off, looking like wreckage from previous battles. The Krathar don't expect traps, he told his pilots. They don't understand deception because they never needed it in their history. When a large Krathar battle cruiser passed near Venus, it ignored the apparent debris floating nearby. Suddenly, 5 pieces of wreckage powered up and attacked, targeting the cruiser's engine cooling systems before disappearing into Venus's cloud cover. Human ships also began using strange flight patterns based on dance movements. Pilots trained to follow these unpredictable paths that made no tactical sense to the Krathar targeting systems. They expect us to fly in logical patterns, explained flight leader Samantha Wright to her squadron. So we'll fly like we're dancing. No logic, just movement. The frustrated Krathar leadership sent their greatest military mind, Supreme Commander Rez-Kar, to personally lead the Earth invasion. His massive flagship entered the solar system with 20 fresh warships. I will show you how to defeat these mad humans, he told his captains. They use chaos and trickery because they are weak. We will force them to face us directly. Rez-Kar set a trap of his own. His fleet formed a protective circle around damaged ships, creating an obvious target that he believed would draw the humans to attack. Admiral Grant studied the new formation on her displays. He's learning, she said to Commander Blackwell. But he still thinks like a Krathar. She authorized a mission that no Krathar would ever consider. 6 human battleships approached Rez-Kar's formation head-on, seeming to finally fight the way the Krathar expected. The alien commander watched with satisfaction. See, they finally understand they cannot win with tricks. But as the human ships came within firing range, they did something completely unexpected. Their crews evacuated in tiny stealth pods that the Krathar sensors didn't detect. Then the empty ships, loaded with explosives and set on autopilot, accelerated directly into the Krathar formation. The resulting explosion destroyed 3 Krathar warships and damaged 4 others. Rez-Kar stared at the tactical display in shock. They sacrificed 6 valuable ships to damage 7 of ours, his second-in-command said in disbelief. Why would they waste resources this way? Rez-Kar had no answer. The human approach to warfare violated everything he understood about military strategy. No Krathar commander would ever consider deliberately losing ships as a valid tactic. As the human stealth pods were recovered by friendly vessels hiding behind Mars, Admiral Grant received news of the mission's success. "The Krathar still don't understand," she told her officers. "They think we're being wasteful or illogical. They don't see that we're playing a different game entirely." Commander Blackwell nodded. "They're fighting to conquer. We're fighting to survive. And they're learning the hard way that nothing is more dangerous than humans with nothing to lose." 10 months into the war, the Krathar faced a new, unexpected problem. It wasn't just human weapons or tactics that troubled them. It was human ideas. On the Krathar prison ship Obedience, Dr. Frank Wilson sat in his cell. The cultural anthropologist had been captured 3 months earlier during a research mission. Instead of breaking under interrogation, he did something the Krathar never expected. He told stories. The guards who brought him food listened with confusion at first, then with growing interest. Wilson told them about human history, myths, and ideas like freedom and choice, concepts alien to the rigid Krathar society. "In our stories, sometimes the small and weak defeat the big and strong," Wilson told a young guard. "We call it the underdog story. It's very popular among humans." The guard tilted his head. "But that makes no sense. The strong should win." Wilson smiled. "Should they? Or is that just what you've been taught?" Across the ship, other human prisoners were having similar conversations. Engineers discussed different ways to solve problems. Soldiers shared jokes that the Krathar didn't understand at first. Musicians hummed songs that the aliens found strangely moving. Worker Kevlar, who maintained the prison ship's engines, began asking questions that would have been unthinkable before meeting humans. Why must we always obey without question? Why can't we suggest better ways to do things? The Krathar leadership became aware of this problem when 3 worker units refused orders. This had never happened in their history. On his flagship, Supreme Commander Redskar received the disturbing report. "The humans are infecting our people with their disorder," he said. "Their chaos spreads like a disease." He ordered all human prisoners isolated, but it was too late. The damage was done. Seeds of doubt had been planted in the previously obedient Krathar workers. Meanwhile, Major Heather Collins led a daring mission to a Krathar communications hub in the asteroid belt. Her small team of 6 infiltrators had trained for months for this single operation. "Remember," she told them as they approached in a captured Krathar shuttle, "we're not here to destroy. We're here to confuse." They docked with the communications hub and quickly overcame the small security team, who never expected an attack on a non-military target. Tech specialist Eric Brown accessed the main communications array. "I've got access," he said. "Uploading our package now." The package was a carefully created audio file. Human children laughing, mixed with Krathar distress calls. For the next week, this sound would randomly interrupt Krathar communications across their fleet. Collins smiled as they made their escape. Psychological warfare at its finest. The effects were immediate and powerful. Krathar ships reported hearing human spirit voices in their communications. Some crews refused to use their communication systems. Others reported hearing orders that were never given. Admiral Grant received the mission report with satisfaction. "The Krathar think in straight lines," she told her staff. "When something doesn't fit their understanding, they don't adapt. They fear it." On Earth, despite heavy bombing from orbit, human cities had moved underground. People lived in vast tunnel systems, always moving, never staying in one place long enough for the Krathar to target them effectively. Dr. Russell continued her psychological analysis of the enemy. "They're starting to show signs of what we call combat stress," she explained to Admiral Grant. "They expected a quick victory. Instead, they're facing an enemy that makes no sense to them, and it's wearing them down." Grant nodded. "Can we push them further?" "Yes," Russell replied. "They're particularly disturbed by our willingness to sacrifice ourselves. It goes against their core belief that self-preservation is the primary instinct of all species." In space, the war continued. Human ships now painted strange symbols on their hulls. adding to the Krathar confusion. Pilots would sometimes broadcast bizarre messages before attacks. Jokes, song lyrics, or nonsensical phrases. A Krathar captain recorded in his log, "The humans do not fight like warriors. They fight like mad beings. They laugh when they should be afraid. They attack when they should retreat. They speak in riddles instead of threats. I fear we have awakened something we do not understand." He was right. The Krathar had wanted war, but they weren't prepared for human madness. 14 months into the war, the Krathar Dominion faced a situation they had never encountered in their 3,000 years of conquest. They were not winning. In the Grand Hall of the Krathar High Command on their homeworld, Supreme Commander Redis stood before the ruling council. His skin had lost its healthy color, and his posture showed exhaustion. "The humans continue to resist," he reported. "They fight in ways that make no sense. We have destroyed 60% of their space fleet, yet they refuse to surrender." The head counselor leaned forward. "You have had 14 cycles to crush these primitives. Why do they still fight?" Rezkar hesitated before speaking. "I believe we must study human creativity rather than simply attempting to crush it. Their unpredictability is their strength. Perhaps we should." "Enough." The head counselor cut him off. "Your failure is unacceptable. You are removed from command." Warlord Vexinar, known for his brutality even among the Krathar, stepped forward. "I will take command. I promise a final solution: the complete destruction of Earth." Meanwhile, Earth's military leadership had changed as well. Most of the original command structure had been killed in Krathar attacks. Admiral Richard Patel, once a mid-level commander, now led Earth's forces. "We cannot win a war of attrition," he told his staff in the underground command center. "The Krathar still have more ships, more weapons, more resources, but we can win a war of will." He authorized Operation Nightmare, a coordinated attack that ignored conventional military objectives. Instead, it targeted Krathar cultural and psychological vulnerabilities. In the asteroid belt, Captain Lily Rodriguez led a group of modified shuttles on a strange mission. Her pilots had practiced a dangerous maneuver, briefly exposing themselves to vacuum without suits. With special training and medical implants, they could survive for up to 15 seconds. When Krathar ships approached, the human pilots opened their cockpits while in full view of Krathar sensors. To the aliens, it appeared as though humans were willingly exposing themselves to space, a suicidal action that made no sense. The sight of humans seeming to ignore the basic instinct for survival spread fear among Krathar crews. In another part of the solar system, Commander Steve Harrison implemented Protocol Madness. His ships performed maneuvers that caused structural damage to themselves, but achieved surprise attacks. Human crews laughed and joked over open channels during combat, knowing the Krathar were listening. One Krathar captain reported, "The humans damage their own vessels to attack us. They laugh while dying. They violate every natural law of warfare." On the Krathar homeworld, unrest grew. Stories of human unpredictability spread among the population. Young Krathar questioned the rigid hierarchy for the first time in their history. Some even secretly shared human stories that had been passed from captured soldiers. Warlord Vexnar arrived in the Sol system with the largest fleet in Krathar history. 200 warships prepared for a final assault on Earth. "We will end this madness," he told his captains. "No more clever tactics. We will simply destroy their planet." Admiral Patel received the news of the approaching armada with grim determination. Earth had fewer than 50 capital ships remaining, plus about 100 smaller vessels. The odds seemed impossible. "We've tried everything," said Commander Blackwell, who had somehow survived the 14 months of war. "Hit and run, psychological warfare, infiltration. What's left?" Patel looked at the tactical display showing the massive Krathar fleet approaching. Then he looked at a side screen where Dr. Samantha Clark waited. She was Earth's leading quantum physicist. "Dr. Clark, is your team ready?" he asked. She nodded. The time distortion device is operational, Admiral, but it's extremely experimental. We can only create very small, very short disruptions in time-space. Messages can go back in time by hours, maybe days at most. That's all we need, Paddle said. The Krathar have no concept of time as anything but linear. To them, the future cannot affect the past. He turned to his staff. Prepare for protocol bedlam. Each ship will act independently. No coordination, no pattern. Complete chaos. As the Krathar fleet approached Earth for what they believed would be their final victory, they had no idea that the humans had one more type of madness to unleash, one that would break reality itself. Warlord Vexnar stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the view screen. Victory was at hand. The human resistance would finally end. Send the message to their leaders, he ordered. Surrender now or be destroyed. His communications officer worked at the controls, then looked up in confusion. Warlord, I'm receiving a transmission. From you. What nonsense is this? Vexnar demanded. The officer played the message. On the screen appeared Vexnar himself, looking stressed and afraid. This is Warlord Vexnar, the recording said. Do not proceed to coordinates 227 to 989. The humans have set a trap. I have seen it. 3 of our largest ships will be destroyed there. Vexnar stared at the screen in shock. This is some human trick. I never sent this message. But the coordinates mentioned were exactly where he had planned to position his lead ships. He hesitated, then ordered, change course. Avoid those coordinates. His second-in-command looked confused. But how did they know our planned positions? At that moment, in Dr. Clark's laboratory deep beneath the lunar surface, a team of scientists worked frantically at their equipment. The time distortion device glowed with strange energy. Message confirmed received, reported one scientist. They've changed course. Dr. Clark nodded. Send the next one from 30 minutes in their future. Across the solar system, human ships began moving in patterns that made no sense, until Krathar vessels arrived at those exact locations. It seemed as if the human ships knew where the Krathar would be before they got there. Warlord Vexnar received more messages supposedly from himself and his captains, all from the future, all warning of human traps and ambushes. His carefully planned attack fell into chaos. How can they predict our every move? He demanded. It's impossible. His science officer suggested hesitantly. They appear to be manipulating time itself. Warlord. Vexnar struck the officer in anger. Time is fixed. It cannot be changed. But the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. Human ships arrived at ambush points before Krathar vessels set course for them. Encrypted orders were countered before they were even transmitted. Admiral Patel watched from Earth Command as the confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Now, he ordered, initiate protocol bedlam. Every remaining human ship suddenly changed tactics. Each captain acted independently, following no pattern or objective. Some attacked, some retreated. Some broadcast music, others went silent. Some flew in crazy spirals, others in straight lines. The Krathar tactical computers, designed to detect patterns and predict enemy movements, could not process what was happening. Their entire military doctrine was based on order and predictability. Warlord Vexnar watched his perfect military formation disintegrate as each ship commander tried to respond differently to the chaotic human attacks. Then something unprecedented happened. On 3 Krathar ships, the worker units revolted. Inspired by human ideas of free choice, they refused orders to fire on Earth. The humans have infected us with their madness, reported one Krathar captain before his transmission was cut off by his own crew. The revolt spread. More ships reported internal conflicts. The perfect hierarchy that had defined Krathar society for thousands of years was breaking down. Vexnar, seeing his grand fleet falling into disarray, made one last desperate attempt. He ordered his flagship to head directly for Earth, planning to destroy it himself. His crew hesitated. His second-in-command stepped forward. "Warlord, perhaps the humans have something to teach us. Their chaos has strength we do not understand." "Traitor!" Vexnar attacked his officer, but was quickly restrained by others. 3 days later, Captain John Rivers sat across from Kexnar, the new leader of the Krathar fleet. The peace negotiations were proceeding well. Rather than demanding surrender, Earth offered knowledge and cultural exchange. A young Krathar approached Rivers after the meeting. "Why do humans fight so strangely?" he asked. "You had no chance of victory against our superior technology, yet you fought anyway." Rivers smiled. "We've been the underdogs throughout our entire history. We never learned to fight like conquerors because we were too busy figuring out how to survive against them." The Krathar considered this. "Will you teach us this human madness?" "It's not madness," Rivers said. "It's creativity, adaptability, thinking beyond rules and patterns. And yes, we'll teach you, if you're ready to learn." Above them, Earth still bore the scars of war, but it had survived. The Krathar had wanted war, but they hadn't been ready for human madness. Now they would learn from it instead.